Greetings. I'm Ariel Cohen. With me here is Wesley Alexander Hill, the Assistant Director and Lead Analyst of the International Tax and Investment Center. And we're going to talk today about the big energy deal Donald Trump cut in the framework of the larger trade deal with the European Union. The deal is proclaiming that $750 billion of US energy resources are going to be purchased by EU members from the United States in 3 years. How is this going to be accomplished? I do not understand, because currently only $75 billion are bought worth of energy every year. Moreover, $600 billion of European investment proclaimed in that deal are not enforceable. How Europe is going to force its businesses to invest $600 billion. So what's going on here? And my answer, what's going on here is not just econ, not just trade. After all, the US is 70% consumer economy, and out of that 70% economy, about 70% is services. So we're looking at 30% of 30% in terms of the overall US trade. Only a small fraction of that is Europe. So the US market is important for Europe, but imports from Europe are less important in the big picture for the US. I've seen estimates that all these tariffs, including Europe, China, eventually Philippines, India, Japan, you name it, it's about 2 to 3% equivalent of a tax on US consumer. And remember, the consumers are paying the majority of the import tariffs. So what's going on with Europe? What's going on is Europe is facing the geopolitical reality of its conflict with Russia. And there are a lot of rumors that Russia may create another provocation in addition to Ukraine, somewhere in the Baltic states, possibly this fall. Europe needs to mobilize to face Russia. For that, it needs United States weapon systems, and the Europeans said they're going to increase the weapons purchases. And Europe needs the backing of the US diplomatically, politically, militarily, if and when the conflict with Russia occurs. So there's another very important component to that, and that is US-China relationship and the strong relationship China developed with Russia. And for that, I would like Wesley to jump in.
So on China, the main importance China plays in this entire role is its possible role in shifting natural gas supplies. So if Europe ends up buying a lot more natural gas, let's assume for American natural gas, and let's assume for the sake of argument, they are entirely sincere about this. What it's going to do is it will crowd out not just Russian natural gas, but it will crowd out Qatari natural gas. So China is already a massive energy consumer in pretty much every commodity you can possibly think of. Its increasing market share in Qatar would really help its Middle Eastern ambitions. It has wanted to play peacemaker in the region, but it recently had a setback thanks to the very brief Israeli-Iranian war, and China sort of lost a lot of face and lost a lot of position. Re-engaging deeper with Qatar is a way to sort of salvage its crumbling position in the Middle East. And re-engaging with Qatar, because America wants to sell more natural gas to Europe, would be easier than ever, because these natural gas suppliers, they're competing for a finite demand in Europe. Europe does have expensive energy prices. There is some unmet demand, but this is largely a fixed market. Europe isn't going to overnight have triple the energy demand. So any American gains in LNG exports are going to come at someone's expense. This is by design when it comes with Russia, but it's going to have unforeseen consequences, especially in the Middle East, especially with Qatar, to a lesser extent, parts of Africa. Mozambique and Nigeria are also big suppliers of natural gas to Europe. They're big as in relative to their economies, and China is more than likely to devour that market share, devour that supply in the event that Europe turns to the United States for all of its gains.
What's fascinating here to me is how, one, China is maneuvering Russia into being more and more dependent on the Chinese market, because the worse the relationship is with Europe, and Europe is planning to cut off Russian gas imports, including LNG, by 2027, the more the Chinese market is important for Putin to finance his war and to have a source of revenue that they lost in Europe. Secondly, how Qatar is increasing its clout by being indispensable for Europe, for China, and in the geopolitical sense, trying to play a mediator for the United States with all kinds of unsavory actors like the Taliban. Qatar was the principal intermediary with the Taliban, and now with Hamas. So a lot of very important and interesting geopolitical and geoeconomic developments going on. Wesley?
It was brought up that this is a very opaque deal, not a lot of details, not a lot of substance behind a lot of the promises. I think that is pretty much by design on Europe's part. While Europe certainly isn't in a great position right now, I think that the lack of commitment, the lack of enforcement mechanisms is really going to help Europe weasel out of any obligations it doesn't want to weasel out of. And it's also going to help the United States by basically allowing the Trump administration to declare victory when it wants to, so it can back down, it can make geopolitical reassessments, etc., without losing face.
Thank you very much. Please subscribe and follow us on YouTube.